Hi everybody, Mike Beer here with the look at the second of the two New York Stallion Series races for the New York Breds on the turf Sunday afternoon at Belmont Park. Race number 8 is the division for the 3-year-old fillies. This is the Cupecoy's Joy division, 7 furlongs on the Widener turf course, $150,000 purse, field of 11. Here's that field right now. You can see there a very lukewarm morning line favorite on David Aragona's line there. Number 9, Stolen Future at 7-2 for trainer Mark Cassidy. Very lightly raced, has some speed, exits what could be considered a pretty tough beat in her most recent start. Took on some older filly and mare allowance horses, had the lead into deep stretch, just got nailed on the wire, but ran pretty well that day, and she's your morning line favorite. Second choice on the morning line is the number 3, Midtown Lights at 4-1. This filly has some turf races on the go back. Her first 2 career starts for trainer Brad Cox on the turf. She's improved since then on the main track, but I don't know if that necessarily has to be attributed to the surface switch. I just feel like she was progressing anyway. Her first 2 turf starts were not terrible performance. She's going to return to turf here to see what happens, and she's been in good form on the dirt. Number 8, LeBron Tom, is 5-1 on the morning line. Another horse who has been contesting stakes races on the dirt most recently. She's never run on turf. She's sort of a known commodity at this point. She's run 10 times, 9 straight stakes races on the main track for her. Won a couple of stakes races as a 2-year-old, picked up another one via disqualification 2 starts back. They're going to try turf with her here and just see if she can handle the surface. It's a pretty good spot for them to do it. I also think it's the right distance for them to try it. And if she's able to transfer her solid dirt form over to the turf, she could certainly be a major player in this race. We'll start out by looking at the time form US pace projector. They have the number 10, Ms. Big Bucks, making the early lead in here. That's certainly possible. Miss Big Bucks, very lightly raced, really nice pedigree for the turf. The only turf start to this point in her career came in her debut, and she just didn't break great in there and then had to rush up. Actually didn't run poorly in that race. Her only other start to date got rained off onto the main track. She stayed in. She went right to the front. She wired a field of maidens and looked pretty good doing it. And now they're going to come back to turf. This is probably the surface that she's meant for. She could certainly be forward in here. I do expect the 9, Stolen Future, to show speed in this race as she tries 7 furlongs for the first time. The pace projector has both the 5 and the 6 switch up close to the pace anyway in this race. The 6, BB Kaz, just made her turf debut at Penn National in a 5 furlong race and broke very slowly in there. But I can see her showing speed in this race as she stretches out from 5 to 7 and faces New York Breds for the first time. Even the number 1 could show a little bit more speed in this race. We'll see how that all plays out. But let's start out by talking about that horse, Red Moon. Won the first 2 starts of her career at Turf Paradise, sprinting on the dirt. Came here to face New York Breds in her most recent start. Switched over to the barn of Bill Morey and just lacked speed after the start of that race. I mean, was working really hard around the turn of that race. Just could not keep up with that field. Dropped to the back of the pack. Was pretty far out of it when that field came into the stretch, and then actually put in a pretty nice run at the end. Made up a lot of ground. Was beaten less than 3 lengths when all was said and done. Slight new buyer top for her. She ran fine in that race. I didn't think she had a huge pedigree, and it didn't, necessarily make me want to bet her as she tries turf for the first time in this spot. She's going to put blinkers on, though. I thought she ran fine in that most recent start. It's not like, she's facing a bunch of killers in this race. If nothing else, this is a race. We have 11 fillies in this field. Only 3 of them have ever won a race on the turf before. So it's not like it's going to take some kind of killer to win this race. And maybe Red Moon will handle the turf well enough to be a factor in this race. The number 2's Dream On Cara. She's a maiden on the way into this race. 11 starts already. She has never won a race to this point anyway. She has pretty good turf form, though. Maybe turf form that's a little bit dirtied up. They've tried some really tough races with her on dirt for some reason. They've run her in 4 stakes races on the dirt while she's still a maiden. They're going to run her in another one here on the turf. But she started out her career on turf. 3 starts on the grass to begin her career. I thought the first of that was a 5 furlong sprint last July. She just looked really green to me in that race. I think she really needed that one. Maybe didn't improve all that much in her second start. I didn't think she ran that well in that race, but I did think she ran pretty well in that final turf start up at Saratoga, going a mile and a 16th. It's just a really slow-paced race. She got caught behind horses. They took her back early. She got caught behind horses and just really couldn't ever improve her position. It's hard to tell how much horse she actually had and whether, how much closer she would have been. But I do think she would have been closer with a clean run in that race, and she just did not get a clean run. They came back to turf for her most recent start and went 9 furlongs with her in another maiden race. That race got wired by a big long shot. This horse did not get a good trip in that race. It actually, I thought, was running on pretty well at the end of that race. It was very, very late when her rider finally took her out into the clear, but she ran at the end of the race. I thought it was sort of maybe a deceptively good performance. I thought it made her a little bit interesting in here as she cuts back and distance. If nothing else, I think she might just be better on turf. Midtown Lights probably takes some money in here. Again, she started out her career with 2 starts on the turf. I thought she ran fine in both of those races. She didn't win either one, but I thought she ran fine. She's gotten progressively better on the main track since then. There have been some wet tracks in there that she handles. She did win a race going a mile, 3 starts back, an allowance race. She's finished 3rd in a couple of stakes races since then. Her overall form's good. Her running style is fine. She's not, she doesn't have a ton of speed, but she's not going to be too far away in this race. And if nothing else, I just don't mind her coming back to turf. I thought her first 2 starts on this surface were in here. I don't know. There are things to like choice in this race. That remains to be seen, but I won't be surprised when she runs well. Joey Big Nose is up next. She made her turf debut most recently in a 2 life claiming race, going a mile and a 16th. Actually ran okay in that race. It was a pretty solid pace for that level of horse. She was right up there. She was contesting it all the way around the turn. She was still in the mix as that field came down to mid-stretch. She wound up getting out-finished by 3 closers who filled out that trifecta. But all in all, that wasn't a poor performance at all. I mean, I think she'll probably have to improve to be a factor in this race. Probably have to run better again, but she did improve in her turf debut last time, so she's at least got that going for her. Maggie T is up next for trainer Linda Rice. This is going to be her turf debut in here. She's run 9 times on dirt, a maiden win by a nose over $40,000 maiden claimers at the end of last year. She won first off the claim for Linda Rice, 3 starts back going a mile on a day where she made the lead, didn't have to go that fast. It just sort of stayed on gamey there. There were no closing going on in that race, and she got clear at the end. Hasn't won either of her 2 races since then. 2 losses as the favorite, in fact, since then. They're going to try turf here. I just didn't really see a ton of turf pedigree for this horse. Maybe she'll be forward in here and be part of the pace in this race. BB Kaz, we talked about, could be forward in here, wired a field of maidens at Penn National, going 5.5 over a sloppy track in her career debut. Turf debut in her most recent start, going 5 furlongs at Penn National. Got out of the gate last in there, was not rushed by her rider, just sort of sat back off the pace and stayed towards the inside. I still thought she looked a little green in there, but she made a little bit of a run through the stretch to get up for 3rd. I didn't think that was a poor performance at all. She's by a terrible turf sire and bank heist, but she switched to the surface last time, and I thought that she ran pretty well. If nothing else, it seemed like she handled it anyway. Stretching out from 5 to 7 is not easy, but this horse might be okay. She's lightly raced. She's going to be a big price in here. Camp Aquila is up next. She's one of the horses that you can easily make a case for in here. Wired a field of maidens going 2 turns on turf at Fairgrounds back in February with a solid 70 Beyer speed figure. Made her next 2 starts in stakes races. One of those, another mile race at the Fairgrounds where she earned a 75 Beyer and was beaten just about 2 lengths that day. It was not a poor performance. They sprinted her in her last 2 starts. I guess if you want to stay positive on her in this race, you just have to say she's not a sprinter. She wants to go a little bit longer. In these 7 furlong races at Belmont, they play more like routes than they do sprints. So maybe it'll help her because she got back in with New York breds in her most recent start there in that Stolen Future race, and she was bad in that race. She was right up on the pace with Stolen Future and with the winner of that race, Master of the Tunes, and she was the first to give way, and she was no factor through the stretch of that race. It was a poor performance, but the positive side is she has better races to get to, and maybe she just wants a little bit more distance. LeBron Tom is up next again. She's going to be a factor in this race if she can transfer her solid dirt form over to turf. It remains to be seen whether or not she can do that. But she's pretty good on dirt. Her most recent start is a problem. She did not run well in the Bowery. That was a really good field. The 1-2 finishers of that race are both pretty good New York breds. And LeBron Tom was just bad in there. I don't know what to say about it. It wasn't a good performance. They're going to try turf now. They're probably trying turf in the right kind of a race too. And again, it's just all about whether you think she can transfer her form over. And then if she does, what kind of price you want to take on it. Because I don't think she's going to be some kind of big price in here. But it would be far from shocking if she handled turf and ran pretty well in this race. She does have turf on the dam side of her pedigree. Stolen Futures, the morning line favorite. We talked about her debut. She just looked green in that race. She faced the winner of that race looked really good to me for trainer George Weaver. Came back and placed in a stakes race in her next start with an 89 Beyer speed figure. This horse won her next start and then ran in that allowance race we were talking about before in her most recent start. That race is a little bit of a problem for me. She did take another step forward there. She was part of the pace and it was competitive, but again, the winner was right up there with her the entire way. This filly got away from that field at the top of the stretch, though. It opened up a clear lead. It looked like she was going to go on. She was still clear past the 8th pole. She was still clear past the 16th pole. And then she just didn't finish that race off, and she got nailed on the wire. She did get nailed by an experienced older horse, so maybe that made a difference. It was only her third start, and it was right off a maiden win. But it felt like the kind of race she could have won, and maybe you could say should have won, and she didn't. And now she's got to stretch out from 6 to 7. And maybe that's an issue for her as well. I have no argument with her as the morning line favorite. I have no argument with anybody who tells me they think she's the horse to beat and that they that they like her in here. I would just maybe like to bet somebody else because I'm a little bit worried about her stretching out from 6 to 7. Miss Big Bucks is up next at number 10. I think this horse is super interested in this race. She's a really fair price on the morning line. We talked about her career debut where she got away from the gate last and then sort of rushed up in there. I thought she ran on fine through the stretch. She just got nailed for third in there, but that to me was a rock solid debut. Her next start reined off to the main track. They left her in. She went right to the top. She wired that field very easily. She's bred to be better on turf. She gets back to turf for this. The 7 furlongs is not supposed to be an issue for her, and she'll be forward. Whether that means on the lead or just sitting somewhere up close, I think that's where she's going to be in this race. And I think she's a major, major player in here at a fair price on the morning line. Little Lindsay completes the field. I wouldn't sleep on this horse. Did lose that Park Avenue division of this series to the Stewards in her most recent start on dirt. She did barely held on there and then got disqualified. And she was placed second, but she ran pretty well there. Her dirt form's been okay, but you have to, go back and look at those first 2 turf starts of her career and think, man, isn't there just a chance that she's better on this surface? 79 Beyer winning her career debut as a 2-year-old at Saratoga on turf. She was a price that day, but she was very game to get the job done there. I thought she ran really well, and as it turns out, I wasn't necessarily sold on that race, right after it happened. But as it turned out, there were a couple of horses behind her who have turned out to be pretty good. Her only other turf start was in a grade 3, going 6 furlongs last October at Aqueduct. I mean, I don't think you're supposed to hold that race against her. She's back to turf now. It's very reasonable to expect that this is going to be her better surface, and maybe she's just a better horse now than she even was when she earned that big figure winning her debut as a 2-year-old. I mean, I think she's a major player in here. I didn't take her on top, but I do think she's a horse that you want to consider, especially if the price winds up being right in this race, and there's a chance that this price winds up being right. She's 6 to 1 on the morning line. We'll put the picks up there now. I'm with 2 horses in here. I wound up putting the 2 on top, Dream On Cara, just because I think she's going to be a really big price in here. And I do believe she's better on turf than she is on dirt. And I think she ran a lot better than it looks in her most recent start. She's just my kind of horse at a big price. So I put her on top. But really for me, I'm going to play against the favorites in here. I'm going to do it with the 2 and with the 10, Ms. Big Bucks, who I think is a really dangerous horse in this race. They're my 2 horses in here. I went 2-10 in race number 8 on Sunday at Belmont Park. It's the Cupecoy's Joy division of the New York Stallion Series. Again, it's race number 8. Your approximate post time is 4:48 Eastern Time. Good luck.